Hey everyone. Today's topic, your job should never be your identity. This is a piece of life advice I've learned over time that's been immensely helpful for maintaining my mental health and overall happiness in life because far too many people, especially in Western countries, make the mistake of attaching their identity to their jobs. And while this may seem harmless at first, it creates quite a bit of issues because of the fact that anytime you attach your identity to anything external to you, like relationships and whatnot, those things can be taken away because they're outside of you. So, a pro tip for life in general is to always place your identity in yourself, like in internal things that can't be taken away from you, like your mindset, your personality, and your skills, that sort of thing. Those things can never be taken away from you by anyone else. But anytime you attach your identity to something outside of you, those things can come and go in life. They're temporary, they're transient. So don't make that mistake, but especially don't do this with your job. And here's why. One of the biggest issues here is that even if you're a good worker at your job, you can still be axed during layoffs. Companies are hardly ever going to be loyal to their employees, even the good employees. Like if you manage to find a company that's loyal to their best employees, consider yourself lucky because that is incredibly rare. Quite often what I've found is most companies are mismanaged because you have a lot of people at the top who are usually older in age, so they're in that short-term mindset and they're the ones calling the shots. They're either the investors or the shareholders, that sort of thing, or the CEO and executives and whatnot. And since they're older in age, they're thinking in the short term because they know they're not going to be around much longer. Like, this may sound funny, but it's the truth, really. They know that they're old, so they want to make money in the here and now. And the problem there is short-term mindsets usually lead to companies crumbling over time because it's unsustainable. Whenever a company, or if you want a company to grow and last in the long run, you need to be thinking long term, making decisions that may not be super profitable in the here and now, but 10 years from now will pay dividends. But quite often, since these investors and shareholders are much older in age, they want money right now. They want it like in the next year, not the next 10 years, the next year, because they're not even sure if they're going to be around 10 years from now. So this is a problem. This leads to layoffs and other things like that once the company starts facing difficulties. And rather than them looking at their employees and saying, okay, who should we keep? Who are the most important people? Quite often what they do instead is, who's the most expensive and do we need them? And then even with that, they quite often make the wrong decisions because they don't fully understand the positions in their own freaking company. So they'll look at someone who makes a lot of money and they'll think, we could probably do without this person, right? And then we'll save a ton of money. And then they lay off that person and they find out they were actually very important and there was a reason they made that much money. So this is a problem, right? If you are loyal to your company, to your job, you will rarely ever get reciprocation there. You will rarely ever find a company that is loyal to you in return. Most companies will view you as just a cog in a wheel or a number on the payroll. That's it. So don't make the mistake of attaching your identity to your job because you can't even be sure that you have legitimate job security. So that's the first qualm I have with doing this. The second one is that your work relationships are usually born of convenience. So many people don't really think of this, but it's usually true, right? So another reason you shouldn't attach your identity to your job is the relationships you have there aren't exactly genuine. What I mean is, would you actually stay friends with these people if you didn't work together? Quite often the answer to that is no. And it's not because they're bad people, right? Like, that's not why. It just may be we don't have many things in common. And that's usually what draws us to other people, right? They either think similarly to us or they have similar hobbies and passions and that sort of thing. So we connect with them in those ways. And that's why we choose to keep them in our lives. But the people you work with, I mean, it's the numbers game. It's statistics on whether or not you're going to end up working with people who think similarly to you or have anything in common with you. So quite often you won't, and that's okay. But that does mean that even though you have decent relationships with them when you're at work, if you were to no longer work there or if they were to no longer work there, would that relationship continue to exist? Probably not. So that's another good reminder for why you shouldn't attach your identity to your job, because those relationships are born of convenience, not genuine connection. So there you go, another reason. And then the last one that I wrote down is that your title isn't as important as you think. This is something that I've always found rather funny, how people can get so attached to their titles, and it's usually due to insecurities, right? Like if they have a fancy title that's got manager or superior supervisor or executive or whatever the hell in the name, most people feel good about that, right? Because most people have never experienced any position that gives them any form of power, even if it's not a lot of power. But if you're managing people or you're making big decisions for a company, you have some legitimate power in that situation. And many people have never experienced that at all in their lives until they finally reach that point in their career. So quite often people get really attached to their titles because they love that feeling of having that importance from their title, that power that comes with it, the prestige, if you will. But your title doesn't mean much either, because if you go anywhere outside or anywhere in life where your title isn't applicable, nobody's going to care that you have it for the most part. Like let's say you're an executive at a defense contractor or whatever. Let's say now you're on a hike and you're with a group of people and something bad happens and now you guys are forced to try to survive in the wilderness for a bit until you're rescued from a helicopter. I know this is a crazy scenario, but is your title going to matter in that scenario? Probably not, right? Like nobody's gonna look at you and be like, oh, you're an executive for a defense contractor? Dude, like you must know how to survive out here in the wild and we're gonna totally listen to you, right? That's not how things work. Your title is only important so long as it's relevant. As soon as you go to places or environments where it's no longer relevant, it doesn't really mean anything. But even going beyond all that, getting attached to your title is not ideal either, because yet again, this is something that isn't fully attached to you. You can lose your title. Heck, I went from being a manager back to a coordinator by choice, for mental health reasons. I quit my last job where I had manager in my title. I didn't actually manage anyone, so I always thought it was kind of weird that I had that in my name because it didn't make sense. Like usually managers manage people. I wasn't, so okay, it was a fancy title, didn't mean anything. So I actually gave it up, went back to being a coordinator for a different company, making the same money. So there you go. That's part of the reason why I had no qualms in making that decision. But it didn't matter to me. Like I've never been attached to titles because I think they're stupid. They don't define us. Like just because someone is a CEO at a company, executive or manager, supervisor, whatever, doesn't mean they intrinsically have more value as a human being than you. It just means they've probably been in that position or working for that company longer than you, so they've had more time to rise in the hierarchy. But does that mean they're a better person? Does that mean that they have more actual life skills? Does it mean that people actually enjoy being around them? Does it mean they have anything, any qualities that are actually worth admiring? Who knows? Maybe not, right? So this is what I'm getting at. Titles don't mean all that much. So don't get attached to them. Don't make that mistake. Work on yourself enough to not care about the prestige that can come with them, to not let the power, the little bit of power that can come with them, get to your head. It's just so stupid when people do this, and it's almost always born of insecurity from people who haven't worked on themselves enough. So they get that title and they immediately think that they're better than others, which isn't quite true, right? So yeah, it's just so important that in general, you do not attach your identity to your jobs. Just for all the reasons I already mentioned, but just never make the mistake of attaching your identity to anything external to you. But attaching it to your job really is one of the more dumb things we could do in life. So certainly don't choose that. Also, don't do it with relationships as well. That's another pro tip. But I've already made a video talking about why you shouldn't attach your identity to external things. I don't remember the title of it, but yeah, I've already talked about that. So feel free to watch that one as a follow-up to this, if you will. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you like content like this, be sure to subscribe for more. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like on it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Arrivederci!